So I was watching the debate between Richard Spencer and Sargon of Akkad, featuring Styx with the huge dicks that he uses on willing chicks. If I were to summarize this debate, I'd say, oy vey. The interaction between Sargon and Spencer consists of Spencer trying to neg him. And for those of you who don't know what this means, the book The Game is basically the Bible of skeezy, morally dubious pickup tactics. And one technique that they describe is negging. That's basically when you act like a bitch in order to confuse your victim and lower their self-esteem. So hopefully they'll want to raise their self-esteem back up to the normal level by gaining your approval and having sex with you. It's complete psycho shit. And watching this debate has convinced me that Richard Spencer has a gay thick stud fetish. He keeps acting like a sassy blonde high school bitch. I think Richard wants to fuck. He went from banging Asian women and race mixing to thick British liberals. I don't think Sargon wants to fuck though. I don't think Sargon wants to fuck. I think Sargon wants to argue. But it didn't really go so well. Let's just take a look.
I'm interested in making this discussion the most intellectually enriching ever.
Okay, well I would just call myself an English liberal. I'm for Enlightenment individualistic liberalism, which I realize that in America that's a contentious term, liberalism.
You're living in an autistic, dissociated reality where you ask moral questions. Like, this is so autistic. I mean, look, you want to play these liberal games of like, well, Locke said the government was this. Well, Jefferson said that a government was created to protect. That is irrelevant. That is totally irrelevant. Well, I ask you a question, you haven't answered it. Sargon, I really find you to be a very tedious and annoying person.
I started with good intentions, Rich. Then you started like acting like an ass.
Sargon, I am going to say something that might be the most insulting thing we've ever heard.
I will accept your apology whenever you're ready to give it.
You think that you are more intelligent than you are. And that's actually a really tricky place to be.
How intelligent am I?
I don't think you're very intelligent.
Oh,
I'm sorry, Sargon. I don't think you're very intelligent.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Well, John Locke said the purpose of government is this. Yippee-ki-yay, it's irrelevant. How you're nibbling around the edges in a way that's just tedious and annoying.
I understand what I'm actually saying when I talk to you about your first principle.
I can't understand. Oh, yes, really, Sargon? I can't understand, Sargon. Yes. Well, I ask you a question, you haven't answered it. Sargon, this is really tedious.
This is what
Do you understand formal law? The United Kingdom, obviously. Why is that funny?
All right.
It's not very powerful.
Let me ask a question. What about those who say, well, Italians aren't really white, so we're not going to let them in. This Turk who's got like 7 white great-grandparents, screw them. This person's a Hapa. That person, they have like, their features are just too dark for some congenital reason. How do you get into that?
What you're saying.
You're talking about autism, but you have to design this weird categorical system. It's not so cut and dry as, hey, you're a citizen, or hey, you're not on a civic basis.
There's a core stock to the white race, and those are Celtic people, Latin people, German people, Anglo-Saxon people, Slavs, and so on. We know a white person when we see one.
I'm new. I just moved here from Africa. What? So if you're from Africa, why are you white?
What's the point in getting DNA tests if you know white people when you see them? I'm genuinely curious.
Or a white Jew. What if someone's like
Jews are a distinct people, obviously. They define themselves.
You don't know.
Yeah, what if they infiltrated?
What if they just say that we're white, which they do on a
regular basis? I don't understand. You're saying, what's the point of a DNA test? I never actually even suggested that. I'm just saying that this concept of a core white race, I don't think is a particularly contentious one.
You can't
like, if you don't benefit from affirmative action, you're white. Let's just put it that way. Is that
so the Japanese are white and certain
guys, come on.
That is the dumbest categorization of what a white person is I have ever heard. It's entirely contextual.
I won't even comment upon that. I'm just simply
you've got nothing, Richard.
Sargon, this is really tedious. This is the core of the white race is not really a matter of great debate. One can ask these prickly questions.
You mean questions that are going to come up necessarily in the establishment of a white ethnostate? Go on.
I feel like the part here where they try to define who's white or not really nails the crack in the alt-right armor, so to speak. Spencer tries dismissing it as being too nitpicky as a question. So does the biased moderator JF. But what they dismiss as nitpicking is very legit questions, because many people don't consider me to be white because of my background as a Bosniak. So if I don't count as white, and I'm pretty fucking white, then what's gonna happen to other white people? If you're gonna talk about preserving whiteness, you better fucking define in extremely clear terms, which cannot be interpreted in a multitude of ways, exactly what whiteness is, so people know whether you plan on oppressing them or not. And people are saying that Richard Spencer won this debate, when really he just evaded important questions and started babbling about other shit, to the point where people just forgot what he was asked to begin with. He also engaged in a shitload of ad hominem and contradicted himself numerous times. Here's one point of the stream.
I mean, sure, I can imagine a purity spiral. Sure, that's one possibility.
Well,
I can imagine a whole host of other things. Thanks.
You're already having these problems.
For your foreknowledge of history.
And here's another point of the stream.
You're literally making this argument. People are purity spiraling on Twitter, therefore the ethnostate will inherently purity spiral into a bloodbath. That just simply does not follow. Does not follow, Sargon.
It absolutely follows. The idea that you think a political purity spiral
doesn't logically follow, the country. By the way. I mean, sure, I can imagine a purity spiral, sure.
Spencer might be more charismatic than Sargon, but I doubt he's actually smarter. One thing Sargon did manage to pull out in this debate, together with Styx, is Richard Spencer's real views on using violence to enforce his goals.
People came here peacefully, therefore they could potentially leave peacefully.
Oh, all right, potentially, but what about the people who wouldn't want to leave peacefully?
Might the government have to use some kind of force? Could it use this humanely? I think the answer is yes. All of these things are possible. It's really a question of will. The government uses force all the time.
That's the real problem. It's really probable that none of this will go the way you think it will go. Really probable. In fact, it's really probable that this will completely collapse before you even finish what you're trying to achieve.
Okay. Even Hitler himself, if you'll probably understand this, referred to the idea of an eternal camp for an eternal struggle. So even if you were to achieve white imperialistic ethnostate, carve the world up in such a way, you wouldn't have stability. So you just end up going through the whole friggin' thing again. So
well, I do agree.
You know, in many ways, you sound like a right-wing version of Peter Kropotkin. You sound like you've got this utopian dream that you want to achieve without any violence, but you are aware that there are probably going to be other political actors within your movement, like, I don't know, the sort of Daily Stormer types, who are more than happy to use violence. Who's putting a bullet in the back of who at that point?
And I can acknowledge that it's not just the ethnostate ideal. There are going to be competing versions of the world for who is going to rule the planet after the fall of the American Empire. Muslims have an idea. They have an idea of what they want to see. I don't want to see that. And there's going to be, the Chinese have an idea, which has certain advantages and many disadvantages, to say the least. There are going to be competing visions of who will rule the planet after the fall of the American unipolar world. And what I am saying is that we need our vision, that those who have a passion and a will to implement a vision are going to be the winners in this. If we decide to all be individualistic liberals and say, oh, we don't want to play that game, we're so afraid of the state, we're so afraid of violence that we don't want to play that game, those people will ultimately be slaves. Those people will ultimately be subjugated to those who are willing to use the state, willing to use force, and who have a bold vision of the future and the will to enact it.
Right, so you're willing to use the state, you're willing to use force, and you're pretty sure you're going to get shot in the back by one of your more violent comrades. Why would anyone take your path anyway?
You simply don't want to play this game. in favor of liberalism or individualism, all that means is that you are going to be someone else's subject. That the people who are willing to act collectively, who have boldness and a vision, are going to ultimately win. And this is the weakest thing. This is a Machiavellian point in the sense that one must be a little bit evil in order to combat evil.
One must be a bit evil to combat evil. I'm pretty sure that's the way Antifa thinks. And we kind of see what's happening there. It's funny because the whole punch a Nazi thing is based on the idea that if Nazis gain power, it's gonna be bad for us all, so therefore we should destroy them before they do. That's what the whole punch a Nazi logic is. I'm kinda sensing the same thing from the alt-right here, meaning if we become a minority in our country, it's gonna be bad. So let's just be oppressive as shit so that doesn't happen.
This is going to not only be a very messy process, but lead into purity spiraling, where whatever it is, whatever the group, the movement, the nation, will start self-consuming on the basis that power will be achieved through racial purity. And that just leads you down a road that you don't really want to go down because, as Styx points out correctly, it's going to end in blood. I think it's a much worse solution to the problem of, well, anything, really.
It doesn't seem
what is that going to be a solution to?
You know, anyone who's not a pure Pole must be killed. Is that a problem in Poland right now?
Poland is not an ethnostate, neither is Japan nor Hungary. None of these countries are obsessed with racial purity. None of them are particularly authoritarian. None of them have removed women's right to vote, banned porn, and believe in conspiracy theories about the Holocaust never happening. Poland's immigration policy isn't based on racial purity. They just happen to be racially pure because of a restrictive migration policy, but those are not the same. At its foundation, there's plenty of Poles who are considered Polish even though they aren't ethnically Polish. Poland are cultural nationalists. Ask them yourselves.
But that's the whole point of, I think, why some would oppose identitarianism. They're worried that it will be, in the process of implementing it and perhaps thereafter will be abusive. In fact, you and McCarthy and others may not have a problem with, like, you know, some Italian person. They've got one Arabic great-grandparent, but they're going to look white. You don't care. Others will care. The problem is that those people, if they manage to seize power, which will happen within a civic structure from time to time, it has throughout human history, they can then exploit that for their own gain. It's the fact is power corrupts. Sure. It's not going to stop corrupting because it's a white person governing other white people. Power corrupts. Sure. It's not power corrupts. Sure. It's not.
This reaction says it all. I mean, they're talking about possible genocide, about possible ethnic cleansing, and Richard Spencer is just like,
corrupts.
Sure.
It's not.
It kind of says it all.